All right, welcome to another edition of Niners Nightly. And of course, we continue on this hour with Sam Ekstrom, who covers the Minnesota Vikings. He's a host and a producer for Locked On Minnesota, and he's with us to help us preview the Week 2 clash. 49ers on the road in Minneapolis, a place they have not won in a long, long time. And Sam is with us to preview it. Sam, how are you? Thanks for a few minutes.
Hey, doing pretty well, Larry. Thanks for having me on. It's been a good week for Vikings fans. I don't think they expected to feel this good after week 1, but here they are trying to pull an upset on Sunday.
Well, it's funny. We obviously noticed that Sam Darnold had a great first performance. He started 12 for 12. He really, really looked good. Darnold didn't play much here last year, got in very late in the year, but played well and was a locker room favorite. Shanahan, really enjoyed having him here. And I think if you asked him, I think he would honestly say that he improved significantly watching Brock Purdy's preparation, watching Kyle Shanahan's game planning and scheming. I think he came here at one level and left at another level, and it's been good for his career. Give me your report. What'd you think of Sam in week 1?
Yeah, I've had to eat crow this week a little bit, Larry, because I've been on the train all along saying that you can't expect too much from a quarterback that was given the keys for 4 years and delivered the way he delivered. I think he was bottom 4 in points scored in 3 of those 4 seasons. His third down percentages, his sacks taken, everything was negative for Sam Darnold for 4 years as a starter. And I just had a hard time believing that he could be much different. But we're in the era of resurrection with these quarterbacks. We've seen Jared Goff get a new lease on life, Baker Mayfield and Geno Smith, and Sam Darnold's trying to do the same thing. And it was exactly the blueprint that the Vikings laid out. I mean, they had a strong running game, a strong defense to support Sam Darnold, pretty good protection, some issues on the interior early. And they asked Sam Darnold to really only have to play about 2.5 quarters before they shut the thing down and leaned on the run game. I'd say he made 4 or 5 high-level throws in that game, including a couple touchdown passes, had a 99-yard scoring drive that he engineered, and he got all the help that he needed. It was a picture-perfect start for the Vikings, albeit against a really bad team. Now, as I've learned covering this team for many years, the conclusions you draw from week 1 are rarely correct in the long term. Stuff changes week to week. It's a week-to-week league. It could come crashing down to earth this Sunday, but for 1 week at least, it looked the way you wanted it to look. Now, if he's forced to throw some more high-pressure balls deep into football games, we'll see what happens. He has a propensity to turn the ball over. But I think that with this coaching staff and Kevin O'Connell, I think he likens himself to Kyle Shanahan in that he's very offensive minded, very savvy in drawing things up. Now he's got a couple of years, Darnold has, exposed to Shanahan's, O'Connell's. He's learning more about the game, and he seems to be playing a little bit smarter.
It was incredible watching it. Sam he looked really, really comfortable, and he's just a guy that if you don't move him off his spot and you let him get into a rhythm, like a lot of quarterbacks, he can be really, really scary. And then of course he's got maybe as good a collection of weapons, as there is. I mean, Justin Jefferson, in my opinion, he's right there. Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson. I mean, I think they're neck and neck. I'd probably give out Jefferson maybe even the slight nod as the best receiver in football. He scored last week. Jordan Addison, Niner fans are all too familiar with Jordan Addison for his late second quarter score in the matchup last year up there. What's Addison's status for this game? I know he got dinged up in the game in week 1. As we sit here right now, do you think he'll go?
I don't think he'll go. This coaching staff is historically pretty conservative with the way they handle players, especially early in the season. They play the long game. They want them available late in the season. They're not going to push them whatsoever. We know how ankles work. A lot of times they flare up in the 48, 72 hours after the injury. And remember, Jordan Addison had the other ankle injured in training camp. So now he's got 2 compromised ankles, and he did not practice on Wednesday. I'd really be shocked if he played on Sunday based on the way that Kevin O'Connell described the injury, said he had pretty significant soreness, and he alluded to the fact that they were going to play kind of the long game and make sure they take care of Jordan with the big picture in mind. So I don't think he's going to play. I think that the Vikings will be undermanned at pass catcher. Again, TJ Hawkinson still out. He's recovering from his ACL. Jordan Addison likely out. So you're going to be seeing Johnny Munt at tight end, Jalen Naylor at wide receiver, Brandon Powell at wide receiver. It might not be quite the collection that the 49ers saw last year.
We're talking to Sam Ekstrom, who's with us, and he's a great follow on X for you guys, at Sam Ekstrom. He's the host and producer of Locked On Minnesota as we preview Niners Vikings coming up on Sunday. You know, it's funny. I'm looking at Aaron Jones in a Vikings uniform, and it just didn't register. It just doesn't look right to me. It's just seeing him in Green Bay for those years. And, you know, Aaron Jones has been a very difficult guy for the 49ers to stop. They did not stop him in the playoffs. He rumbled against the 49ers in the playoffs. But, you know, it's interesting. This Viking team, it seems like the last 4 or 5 times the Niners have played them, have always been kind of a multiple back outfit, whether it was Dalvin or Madison or both, or, you know, they always seem like they always had a combo. It seems, I know Ty Chandler, I love Ty Chandler at Carolina, but it seems like Aaron Jones is going to be like far and away the number one back in Minnesota. How do you see the running back carries being divvied up in their backfield after watching them this summer?
Yeah, I think that Aaron Jones is your clear-cut number one guy, but he also historically has not been a back that carries it 20, 25 times. And maybe that's just the way Green Bay wanted to handle him, but they were always really smart with the way they kind of reduced his carries to keep him fresh. He was really more of a 10 to 15 carries kind of guy. And with those limited touches, he always made an impact. He doesn't need a long time to get lathered up. I think he only had 27 snaps or 27 snaps for the Vikings in that game against the Giants, and he had 94 yards rushing on 14 carries and a couple of catches and a touchdown. I mean, he had a high impact in low usage. And that's what the Vikings have been looking for a bit. They've been woeful in the run game in the 2 years under Kevin O'Connell. That's been one offensive area he's yet to crack. He had a diminished Dalvin Cook in 2022. They tried the Alexander Madison experiment last year. Didn't work out well. So Aaron Jones' worst season, I think, still better than what they had with Alexander Madison last year. And he seems primed for a really big year here with the Vikings. I think that Ty Chandler's a really nice mix-up or kind of a change of pace when they go to him coming off as that number 2 running back. He's got a little more shiftiness, a little more speed, and can catch the football. It's a good 1-2 punch. I think Jones probably the lion's share, but you got to watch out for Ty Chandler. Very much like the 49ers showed their running back depth with Jordan Mason.
No question. And you're going to see a lot more Mason, I think, on Sunday as well. You know, the Vikings are an interesting team because they seem like they have the Niners number and they play with tremendous confidence. I thought Kirk Cousins, that performance that he had last year up there was one of the greatest quarterbacking performances I think I've ever seen against the 49ers. I mean, he completed a ridiculously high percentage. He was always ahead of the defense, and he just fit balls into tight windows all night long. It was a true clinic from Cousins, who now moves on to Atlanta. When you look at Jones, do you think they'll throw it to him more out of the backfield? Because the Niners, if there's one thing a lot of teams look at the Niners and they say, well, Floyd, Bosa, Hargrave, man, we got to protect our quarterback. We got to operate underneath, get the ball out quick. And then the Niners seem like they get a lot of the screen game thrown at them. And to be completely honest, Sam, they have struggled defensively to close down that space consistently against screen passes. How often did Minnesota, go to the screen pass and the short stuff with Jones in the passing game this summer?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's probably on the table more this year than it has been for the past several years. That was a weird void in Dalvin Cook's game, and he was their bell cow for many years, is he wasn't really that adept in the passing game. His hands just weren't very good. Aaron Jones has more of a track record of doing this successfully. He's got a couple almost 400-yard receiving seasons, and the Vikings are always saying how they want to get, the ball in the hands of their running backs through the air. It's a matter of then putting it to practice. But I think that's a really good type of play for Sam Darnold. I still think the Vikings want to mitigate Sam Darnold throwing the football in high risk areas. I think that a nice screen game is a quarterback's best friend. And against a tough defense like the 49ers, a tough secondary like the 49ers, I think the screen game could be really impactful. So if it's not Jones, I think it could be Chandler. I think he's even maybe a step above Aaron Jones in just catching the ball and being really fluid in that area of the game. So I would look for it a couple times. You can't go to the well too many times in the screen game, but a well-placed screen certainly could pay dividends on Sunday.
Yeah, no, I mean, and if you throw enough of them, one could break. Darnold, by the way, 19 of 24 for 208 and 2 touchdowns and 1 pick. 113.2 passer rating last week against the G-Men. He now goes up against a team that he knows that he was on a year ago. And the quote from Darnold this week, he says, being able to prepare and be ready like I was the starter, or he said, being able to prepare and be ready like I was the starter, but just sit back and watch everything that was going on in the organization, how things were run there in San Francisco really helped. I really did learn a lot from Brock Purdy and the way he prepared, his quiet confidence that he had every single day. He's not the rah-rah guy, not going to lead the team in breakdowns at the end of the year, but he's just as steady as they come. Darnold is interesting, and he operates behind a pretty good Viking line. Let's talk about the line for a second. Christian Darrisaw, first-round pick. O'Neal, who's a house at right tackle, was a second-round pick going way back to 2018. Bradbury was a first-round pick in 2019. Ingram, the right guard, was a second-round pick. So this is a line that's pretty filled with day one and day two draft picks for the most part. What do you think of the Viking line? Is Darrisaw the star on this line?
Darrisaw is the star on the line. He gets likened to Trent Williams a lot in these parts, and I think there's some validity there. He is a beast, and the Vikings are lucky to have him. That was the great final move of the Rick Spielman era at GM was to draft Christian Darrisaw in the first round, and he recently got an extension, and he'll be here for a long time. Brian O'Neal, fantastic at right tackle. It's the same story as they've had the past few years. The tackles are sound. The interior is suspect. Garrett Bradbury has been a liability in pass protection for a number of years. He does a lot of other stuff well, but the pass pro, he's just a little undersized. He doesn't have quite the strength, and he's facing increasingly more and more nose tackles that just bulldoze you. I mean, Dexter Lawrence did a number on the Vikings interior line in that game against the Giants. Ed Ingram has been shoddy his entire career. This is year 3 now, and they keep believing that continuity and reps will help him. And he had a better year 2 than a year 1, and they're hoping that he takes another step forward in year 3. Blake Brandel was a swing man for a couple of years, and they've elevated him to a starter now in a full-time capacity for the first time at left guard. So I've laid it out there for you. You've got question marks at all the interior spots. Tackles, great. If you're going to attack the Vikings, you got to do it through the middle. You got to go right over the center, try to beat those guards with some stunts, because you're not going to have as much luck on the outside. And that's where Bosa likes to feast. So I wouldn't be surprised if they try to get him running up the middle somehow and try to beat some of those, the Brandels, the Ingrams in a bit of a mismatch.
Both the Niners and the Vikings were impressive defensively in week 1 for sure. The Niners held the Jets to 266 total yards, really held down Aaron Rodgers. He threw for only 167 yards, 1 touchdown. He had the 1 pick off the deflection. Leonard Floyd got a sack for the Niners. But the Vikings also looked really good. Brian Flores is a hell of a defensive coordinator. They brought in Van Ginkel from Miami. He had a pick for a touchdown. Harrison Smith baited Daniel Jones into another pick. Minnesota racked up 5 sacks. Patrick Jones, the second, the former Pitt Panther, had a pair. Van Ginkel got one. The rookie, Dallas Turner, got one. They only gave up 6 points to the Giants and held Daniel Jones to 186 yards, 52% completion, and forced those 2 picks. So, in your mind, what did Minnesota's defense look like? Was that Minnesota's defense last week, or was that an inept Giants offense that we saw, or both?
Yeah, certainly a little bit of both. Brian Flores last year had a propensity to do this. He made bad quarterbacks look really bad, like when they took on Bryce Young last year. That was kind of how Bryce Young looked. But again, that defense was unveiled to us Vikings followers for the first time as well. There's so many new pieces. I think they brought back like 3 defensive linemen from last year. That includes the outside linebackers that are all new. They've got new cornerbacks and Stephon Gilmore and Shaq Griffin. They've got a new linebacker and Blake Cashman. That, like, more than half the defense has been remade. So that was a first for us too, seeing it. What you do know about Brian Flores is he's going to be highly aggressive at the line of scrimmage. He's going to bring blitz at an extremely high rate. It was only 38% against Daniel Jones, but again, Daniel Jones doesn't have the weapons. He can't beat you deep. It made sense to sit back a bit in coverage, clog the middle of the field, and rally to the football, and that worked pretty well. Probably a different game plan against the 49ers with their weapons, their speed, their skill. They've got a better quarterback. We'll see what tact Brian Flores takes. But I saw a physicality from that group that I haven't seen in years past that I think will do well against the run game. They've got a linebacker, Ivan Pace, who was undrafted last year. No one, I think, nationally really knows his name, but he was a day one starter for the Vikings as an undrafted free agent rookie linebacker, and he's wearing the green dot. I mean, he is really the anchor of that defense now. He flies around the field. He's really fun to watch, and they've got a Swiss Army knife in Josh Metellus, who they elevated last year to a starter in Brian Flores' first year, and he's flying all over the field. So Flores came in here. He said, give me versatile, fast players that will rally to the football and have a good head on their shoulders. And that seems to be the type of player he values. And it's created a really fun defense to watch. They haven't played a lot of games together. They're gelling still, kind of in real time, but they are absolutely fun to watch.
It's so interesting too, because from a personnel standpoint, Ivan Pace was passed over in the draft because he's 5'10", but the NFL game is such a space game, such a game of athletes that it's like it used to be, the 4'9" running, linebacker with the big neck roll, that guy could play in the NFL. Now, if you're a 4'7" guy, and you don't move great, they'll isolate you in space and pass coverage, and you'll be pretty much forced off the field. And it's put an emphasis on athleticism. And because of it, they don't really care as much if you're 5'10" or 5'11" or 6'1". It used to be, hey, man, you better be 6'2" to 6'4" and, 240 to 260. Now it's like, hey, two guys in the 220s can play. Guys who are under 6 feet can play. Pace was awesome at Cincinnati. He had 102 tackles last year with the Vikings, including 2.5 sacks. Yeah, he is the real deal. I mean, there's no question. He flies around. You mentioned Metellus. Let's talk about him. I'm watching Chris Long on Inside the NFL a couple weeks ago, and they're going with their football guys. And he goes, man, I'm going Josh Metellus. And then he's like, hey, by the way, most of the people watching this have never heard of Josh Metellus. And he laughed about it. But Metellus has been used as in a unique fashion. He is a safety in size. He's 5'11", 207 pounds, played collegiately at Michigan. But he's just utilized close to the line of scrimmage. He can be a delayed blitzer. He's a guy that gets home. When he goes after the quarterback, he's got a great instinct for it, a great feel for it. Talk about how Flores utilizes Metellus, because he's a unique player, isn't he? I mean, there's only a few players like this around the league.
Yeah, positionless. He's a modern positionless player. Safety, box linebacker, slot corner. They're kind of the way they've used Harrison Smith, except even more dramatic in how he plays all over the field. And really impressive, too, how they identified him, because Flores came in. At the time, Metellus had only been a special teamer, 3-year special teamer, and I don't think anybody projected him to be that much more than that. In the summer, Flores comes in immediately. He's got Metellus running with the first team. So clearly there was something on tape. There was something churning in Flores' mind. He said, this is what I need. This is the type of player I need. Who do we have that can do this? And it was Josh Metellus. And he grew into the role. And he's, one of the 3-4 most important players on the Vikings defense. It's remarkable how his career has turned from being kind of an afterthought now to a second contract guy who's now making a lot of money for the Vikings. Really cool work by Brian Flores to sort of find a niche player like that. And he's your ultimate utility guy on the defensive end.
Sam, one last one. Who's the wild card factor in this game? And give us your prediction. I mean, If I was going wild card factor on the Vikings side, I'm kind of worried about Jonathan Greenard. I think Greenard is a tremendous talent. I loved him with Houston. Great college player, like 26 years old in his prime. I just think that he's going to be a problem for the 49er tackles to deal with. Give me your wild card factor either side of the ball and what you think the score is going to be.
Yeah, I'll go with the other outside linebacker. How about Andrew Van Ginkel? Van Ginkel had a pick six. He was all over the field against the Giants. And if I recall last year, the Vikings worked Colton McKivitz pretty well in that game at US Bank Stadium. And we'll see who's ever lining up across from him in opposite of Trent Williams and can get after Brock Purdy. But I think Van Ginkel just wreaks havoc because he can cover. He could cover a running back in a wheel route, and he can rush the passer really well. And he bats balls down, and he rallies to the football and run defense. He's another very positionless jack of all trades Flores archetype. So I'll go with Van Ginkel, the other new Viking there at outside linebacker. However, you asked for a prediction. I think I'll go with the team that has a little bit more talent, 26-20 49ers in a competitive football game.
And tell us a little bit, give us a little promotion on you before you check out. You're the host and producer of Locked On Minnesota. I know the Locked On people really well. John Lund did the Locked On San Francisco out here for a while. Lots of Locked On. David has done an incredible job with Locked On, David Locke. What do you tell us a little bit about when people can check out your show?
Yeah, we do daily programming at Locked On Sports Minnesota. Check it out on YouTube. Check it out wherever you get your podcasts. We've got a good team of people. We work with the local Tegna affiliate, Care 11. We've got their anchors working with us. We've got Arif Hassan, who's one of the top, football journalists out there on our Monday and Thursday shows. It's a lot of Vikings talk. It's a lot of Gophers talk here. And we have a lot of fun. So, yeah, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and then instant reaction Vikings shows when it's all done. If you want to check that out. If you have an interest in the purple, subscribe to Locked On Sports Minnesota.
Sam Ekstrom. He's a great follow on X at Sam Ekstrom, EKSTROM. Sam, thanks again for your time. Really appreciated it.
Hey, thanks a lot, Larry.
There you go. We'll continue with more on Niners Nightly. A few more thoughts on the matchup coming up next on Niners Nightly on KMBR, the sports leader.